Hi, friends. Lori Ashcraft here. I'm your host for Viva la Evolution, which is a podcast focusing on recovery and resilience, and is sponsored by Recovery and Resilience Solutions, which is a branch of Western Behavioral Health that does training and consulting. Before I go any further, let me just remind you to please subscribe. I keep forgetting to ask people to do that. And it's really important if you have a podcast to have people to have subscribers, like team players and stuff like that. So anyway, please do that. Okay, today's story is a little bit different, but it's also not different. It's not different in that it's a story of trauma, recovering from trauma. It's a story of addiction. It's a story of strength and hope. We all have the story inside of us. It's like the hero's journey that we take. But this story brings up so many important aspects that in fact, I made a little list because I want to make sure and point them out to you. So as you listen and watch, these are the things I want you to watch for. And Noah, this is my friend Noah Palmer, by the way. We have been friends for about 8 years, and we became much closer after he had a very serious traumatic event happen about a year ago. And that was that he was in a motorcycle accident and he lost his sight. So this is a story about going into and coming out of a traumatic experience, along with, I'm going to call this a prep course in getting over addiction. So, okay, so here's what I want you to look out for. Notice how Noah talks about losing sight of his path. He starts off in his life with a strong sense of purpose. He's got a path. It's laid out. He's on top of it. He's an independent, kind of charismatic leader. And then things come along that get us off our track, off our path. And you'll hear Noah talk about that, like what it feels like to get off the path. And then prior to getting off of our path, we often get little warning signs like, whoops, you're getting off, come back. It could be our friends telling us that we've gone a little bit too far, our friends telling us we've had a little too much to drink, or having like a run-in with the law, like that's a good wake-up call. Or I can't even, I could go on and on, but I think you get the point. We get these little wake-up calls, and sometimes we listen to them and get back on track before we get too far gone. Sometimes we don't. I know in my case, there's probably been a few times when I've got back on track before I hit bottom, but usually I have to just hit the bottom and get hit over the head with a sledgehammer. But oh, I see, I'm off track. Okay, so, and sometimes these notices, these warning signs, come from within us, come from within. And it could be, this could be where we're the intersection of our spirit and God, whatever you make God up to be. That place inside of us that is sacred, that connects to the great, I'm just going to say the great spirit. I know we have all different kinds of faiths here, but I think we can all relate to a great spirit. And often the first step in that is the same as like the 12 steps, admitting that we're powerless over something. Now, this does not mean that we are powerless as people. We obviously still have a lot of power left in us. We need to mobilize and harness that power to get us out of the addiction. But we are powerless over something that is taking us out. That's the first of the 12 steps. It's a good one. So whether you do 12 steps or not, there's that moment of saying, okay, this is it. This is where I have to surrender. And then something happens to we're totally independent. We got this. We don't need any help. And then we make a switch to interdependence. We realize that we need other people. We need community. And you'll hear in Noah's story the important role that community plays in his recovery processes. And then again, something Noah makes so clear is letting go, being willing to let go of where we are, to open a space for our next step. Now, Noah and I have been reading, and some of our other friends, we have a little book study, have been reading this book, Upside. And it's a book by Jim Rinden, and he talks about and gives ways of moving out of a traumatic experience into growth. And he gives lots and lots of research around how trauma often ignites the growth process beyond where we ever thought we could go. And just a side note, Jim is going to come on and do a podcast with us in a few weeks. And we'll talk more about post-traumatic growth. But just as preparation for that, listen to how Noah moves into that space in his experience. And then finally, he'll talk about the importance of having hopes and dreams. You know, we can come from our side of things and try to move ourselves forward. But if we have hopes and dreams out there in the future, they actually will pull us towards. So it's almost like we're reeling in a hope and a dream that pulls us closer to where we want to be. So I didn't mean to go on and on like that, but I did want to give you a heads up about what to pay attention to. So there's that. Okay, I think that's all I have to say. So let's go ahead and listen to Noah, a good friend of mine, and by the time we're through, you will feel like he's a good friend to you too. He shares from his heart and his soul the things that are important to all of us as we try to use our traumas to move into growth, to ignite growth. Okay, here we go. Well, thank you for joining us, my friends. I have a great honor today to introduce you to my friend Noah and his best friend Zazu. Zazu and he have been together for, 8 years, did you tell me?
6.
6 years. And Zazu has always been incredibly important to Noah, but in the last year he's become even more important, and we'll tell you all about that. So, Zazu, you can go back down if you're more comfortable down there. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, thank you. He's got to figure out he's got to find his place now. So, Noah, we have so much to talk about.
Yeah.
You have so many incredible journeys to share with us. And they're all so informative about the recovery process. What you share with us today will be so helpful to so many people who are on various recovery journeys.
All right. Well, first of all, I would just like to reiterate how honored I am to be here.
Oh, thanks.
When you told me you had a podcast, I jumped right in and started listening to them. And we hadn't talked about doing one together, and then we had talked about doing one together, and I started listening, and I realized that most of these people have written books, they have PhDs, and I was like, what do I have to offer? And then I listened to one, and it was a younger guy, and he just talked about how his struggle was and his process through recovery, and I realized what you saw in me, and I remember the first time that you came over to my house, and it was the first time we had spent time together one-on-one.
Yeah.
And it was after my accident, and we just talked so deeply, so quickly, and really formed a really strong connection that has not to this day had any challenges or disagreements, and we just flow and talk about deep things. It's never a surface level conversation. And at this point in my life, I choose people who choose to engage, people who are in, like, recovering and showing signs of it. And that's kind of a non-negotiable for me in my life, is authenticity and truth and trust. And and it got to the point where people were so concerned for me that they were begging me to go get help, and I had agreed, and didn't really have a plan in place. Just knew that I was on a rough path, and decided to stop drinking. And that's about where it was. I stopped drinking like 3 or 4 days before I went out to the desert, and was feeling really good about that decision, and felt like I had enough strength and I was in my power to go to this event and have a good time without having to drink. And that's the tough part. Well, it's not the tough part, but that is something that I have had to sit with a lot. Is, damn, like, I made a good decision. I made a good decision, and bad things happened. So the accident happened, and I immediately stood up, and I knew that it was bad, obviously. But there was a voice that was there, and I knew that I was not going to die. I knew that I was going to be okay.
Tell us about the voice. What do you mean voice? Just so we can make it up, but let's get clear.
Yeah, sure. I felt my guardian angels holding me. It was this inner sense of, you're going to be okay. And after repeating that so many times to the younger version of myself, I believed it. And as I was sitting there, I had to wait a very long time for the helicopters to come, but as I was sitting there, I started, that's really when I started to have conversations with God, as I see Him, as I see God.
Well, what were the conversations? I mean, were you talking and God was talking, or was it just you talking?
It was mostly just me talking, and like affirmations, like in my body, like just general sense of knowing. I could feel a couple of my friends that have passed away there just watching over me. And there was something inside of me that just said, okay, like this happened. You are going to have to surrender to this, or you're not going to make it through. Like, we don't know what's going to happen, like, in the next day or two, but you're going to come out okay, and there is more here for you. And I don't know if it was my voice or the voice of something else, but it was this voice that said, if you couldn't see before, like, now you can see.
After you'd lost your physical vision, it was like, now you can see.
Yeah.
Wow. And that was the beginning of a remarkable journey you've been on.
Yeah. Yes, it is. I spent 40 days in the hospital. My mom, my fiance at the time, or my ex-fiance, she had immediately dropped everything she was doing and flown to Utah to be with me. She was the first voice I had heard. And she was there for weeks. And that was a huge part of why our separation is so okay. I am a firm believer in unconditional love, and that unconditional really means unconditional, no matter what it looks like. And there she was, showing up when she really didn't need to. And she gave me hope. And then my mom came, and every day the chaplains would come through. And I couldn't speak at the time. I couldn't see, and I was communicating via whiteboard. Strangely enough, I'm a very good blind writer. But my first experience was with the chaplain, was amazing. She was very non-denominational. She could tell that, or I could tell that she was kind of a hippie. And she just sat there and held my hands. And I could feel her connection to something bigger. And she prayed with me. And as soon as we let go hands, I just wrote down, please come back tomorrow. And every day, she went back to the office and told them about me. And so every day for like 4 or 5 days, it was a different one. They had to come and meet me. They could, because I was writing to them and talking about, the fact that I'm okay. And the first thing I wrote on the whiteboard that got out to the public said, hi everyone, I just want you to know that I am in a lot of pain, but I am not suffering. And there was more after that, but I was in this place where I was just in complete surrender. I knew that there was nothing I could do about my situation in that moment. And that suffering is optional. It's like we can choose to sit with our suffering, but it doesn't have to control us.
You're edging up to the book we've been reading. The book, it's called Upside by Jim Rinden. And Jim is going to be coming on our podcast in a few weeks. And it's a series of stories about people in catastrophic situations who, when they look back, they say, I am such a better person. I'm so much wiser and stronger than I was before this happened to me. And that's kind of your story. I mean, you're just beginning that story. But so far, you're holding ground for post-traumatic growth. You're not stuck in post-traumatic stress disorder. You're continually holding that space open for learning and knowing and finding your way.
Yeah. I think, immediately when I was in the hospital and I accepted what had happened and that I was surrendering to what was coming next, I don't know what this looks like. And I couldn't talk for a couple of weeks. So all I had was myself. All I had was my thoughts. Yeah. And I really, really looked at everything and came to terms with where I was. And that in and of itself is post-traumatic growth. It's like I was shocked into remembering all of my tools, my emotional regulation tools, my somatic tools. All of these things I was actively using to create an environment for myself that was not skewed. It was true. I took accountability for a lot of things and forgave myself for a lot of things. And that was the beginning, was me forgiving myself and my role in what happened and led up to it. And self-forgiveness frees you. It allows you to see things wholly. And that was my first experience post-accident with the fact that I was growing and that I wasn't upset and I wasn't angry. I got angry and I was like, whoa. Like, what is underneath this? It's sadness. Okay, what's underneath the sadness? It's, I can't meet these needs for myself. There is a part of me that is not even into grief yet, and it's scary to know what that's going to feel like. So quickly you can transform feelings into, give them a different name, reframe them. You and I the other day at my house were talking about the difference between solitude and isolation. And, solitude is chosen quiet time and chosen time alone to reflect. And isolation is time alone that you do not want and that you cannot change. And or that is difficult to change. So instead of changing it, you'd rather wallow in this isolation. And for me, it's like very, very intense. I clench. And after we talked about that, I really sat with that and realized that, when people leave and I'm alone and I tense up, yeah, sure, there's fear of being alone, but I get to be alone. And I have to remember that there is no one at my house pushing me around in a wheelchair. I don't have a brain injury.
Right. Yeah.
There's only so many tickets to Earth.
Yeah.
And I got 2 of them.
Yeah.
Before I needed to recover from anything. I was born outside of Seattle. And we moved to Bend, Oregon. My mom, my dad, and I. They had my sister. We moved to Seattle. We had my younger brother. And then my dad wanted to be closer to my family. And we packed up and moved to Montana. I think I was probably 5, I want to say. 4 or 5, somewhere in there. And we moved out in the middle of nowhere in this tiny little rural town called Big Fork. And my parents were gung-ho on having a garden, and we were just always playing in the woods, and my dad was teaching us to trap rabbits and squirrels, and we were an inseparable little pod, the 3 of us, and with my dad working and my mom working, we were just kind of there and had to make life for ourselves.
I remember you talking to me a little bit about when you figured out you had interest and talent in the area of writing and poetry. I think you were in high school by then.
Yeah, I was. I bring up being that young because, I didn't know at the time, and I didn't know till very recently that, even living a normal amount of time with absent parents at that young of an age creates a trigger, creates something in your being that has an unmet need, and there's lack there, and you don't know how to express yourself, and this is just the world that you're in. And shortly thereafter my parents separated. My mom took off, and my dad just stepped up. He was working construction, and he worked a lot, like all day, every day. And my brother and my sister and I took care of ourselves. We had babysitters every once in a while, but babysitter was a thief. Babysitter didn't show up. Babysitter fell asleep on the couch. And we were living on our own, creating the world, just defining the world without structure, without initiation, without help along the way, to some extent. And I think that in and of itself creates a trauma. It creates a loop. It creates a pattern, because every time you are engaged with an adult, engaged with a parent, you are ultimately trying to seek something inside of you, these needs that are met: connection, guidance, parenting, emotion, permission to be emotional. And we don't understand that stuff when we're that age. And then I got to my teenage years and we moved to a little bit bigger of a city, and I found a group of friends, and I was a skateboarder, and we were rebels. We were, troublemakers, not criminals at that point, but we liked to enjoy ourselves. And, we started going to parties and started experimenting with alcohol. And, I just noticed how it made me feel at that time, which was numb, You know, I know now that what I was looking for was connection and acceptance and love from those who love me. And that was the quickest way to not feel like I did something wrong and didn't know how to
Yeah.
express it. You know,
And I hear that from so many people that are struggling with addictions, that, you know, the antidote to addiction is connection, and the whole thing around numbing. And I've had my own experience with addictions, with food addictions and eating disorders, and I would say the same thing. It's a numbing. It's a way to numb so you can keep doing what already doesn't work. Yeah.
you know, they say that hindsight is 20/20, and you know, after my Saturn return, when I turned 28, I was living here. I'd been here, I'd been here a few years, and had engaged with this community here, and was finding all the things that I was seeking. You know, high vibrational, intelligent, smart, fun, responsible people that for the first time in my life, like, held each other accountable for things. You know, for not honoring commitments, for being out of integrity, and I realized that you can approach these things in a healthy way where the other person isn't feeling reserved. They don't
Yeah.
tense up in their body.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that at that age, at 13, when I started experimenting with alcohol, you know, it's a roadmap, like you were saying, like you can really trace it back, you know, which parent was absent, was there violence, did this person like get help that they needed, you know, like I often think back to like shamanic cultures and Native American cultures and like the Druids and all of these cultures that had initiatory processes. You know, they taught the boys how to be men, how to deal with your feelings, how to allow your feelings, how to treat people, what your responsibilities are, what your responsibilities are not. You know, how to take and give equal energy, not leaking it, not taking unnecessary energy on yourself. And you know, had I known that at that time, things would be different. But they aren't. You know,
Yeah.
this is my journey.
So
And-
having that community, did that really help you break through the addiction cycle?
Well, through alcohol, you know, I had a very, very wide circle of friends, and many of them I am still very close with. But, you know, at times I was always the loudest, always the rowdiest, always edging people. You know, I was exciting, I was fun, and
Your friends
Very-
called you a warrior.
yeah, very like magnetic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people would come along for the ride with me, no matter what it looked like. You know, it could be destructive, it could be dangerous. I could talk my way out of anything. So, you know, eventually, drinking got pretty serious, and I had found out about AA on Fridays at lunchtime. You know, I was absolutely not interested, and they told me there was free pizza, and immediately I turned around and walked right in and was like, "Hey, I'm an alcoholic. Give me pizza." You know, and I've told the story, you know, for a long time that I went to AA in high school for pizza, and I know very clearly now that somatically, my higher self knew that I wasn't just going for
It
the
wasn't
pizza.
about the pizza.
You know,
Yeah.
I was listening and engaging to find out what the program was like, learned what I didn't like about it, learned what I did like about it, and take those practices into my life.
Yeah.
You know, even if I wasn't believing part of it. You know, I've always really struggled with the church and with God as a word, as a noun, as someone out there, you know, controlling my life. And I was actually thinking earlier today, first of all, what we were going to talk about. And now that we're here talking about it, I'm like, is this going to be enough time?
Don't worry. We'll make it work.
Yeah. But, you know, I had told myself that I didn't believe in God, and I didn't want to believe that there was something out there controlling me, even if it was for the better, because autonomy and control were things when I was younger that I didn't have,
Yeah.
that felt unsafe.
And it's interesting, isn't it? I'm just reflecting on this, that we think about God as this controlling force, Yet, you know by now that God doesn't describe him or herself that way. It's all free will. And I'm here for you. I love you. If you want to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
But we project this thing about control onto it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that in part it was the only people who could watch us after school were my dad's boss's wife and kids, and they had a bunch of adopted children, but they were very, very religious. And we were forced to go to Awanas and to church on Wednesday evenings. And I was in this stage of rebellion that like anyone that told me to do something, I was so resistant to, because I wanted to be in control of
Gosh,
my
I wasn't
own
like
life.
that at all when I was a teenager.
Yeah, I wanted to be in control of my life,
Yeah,
because
I
when I was
remember
younger,
that. I remember
everything in my life was out of control.
Yeah.
And it felt unsafe, and all I wanted was safety.
Yeah.
And and then I continued to drink, and through drinking I found connection through sex and intimacy, and that was how I got connection at that point. And when I was young, I had a lot of friends, but I felt alone. I felt isolated. I felt very very alone. And I could get myself to a place of connection through alcohol. And I moved into my 20s, and I found a long-term...
Oh, wait, I want to skip this one part.
Go ahead.
Because I really like it. It's the part where you got very interested in poetry and writing. And that was the beginning of your writing, I'm going to call it career, your writing career.
Yeah.
Because I feel that coming back at this point.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And you were kind of a leader in that area.
I was, yeah. I've always loved to write, and when I was, a sophomore in high school, I took a creative writing course, and I forget there was a few classes, but a lot of them had spontaneous exercises that would happen at the beginning of class, and I was always really good at just free form, just drop your pencil and write, like sometimes there was a single word that someone would throw out. Sometimes it was just go, it'd give you a timer, and I was always the one with my hand up, because I was like, damn, how did I do that fast? Like this is cool. Yeah. I was always very good at writing papers, even though I didn't want to, and saved it to the last minute. And I really enjoyed writing. And then my senior year, I was taking like advanced creative writing. And my teacher's assistant would always be playing music in the room when we walked in, and I learned about just incredible bands from him, and him and I had a really good bond, and he was very encouraging and would keep me after class and talk to me about, like you have a talent here, you just have to direct it in the right direction. And I didn't know what he meant by that, but the next day I got to school, and the principal was standing in the hallway, and he's like, Palmer, come into my office. And my creative writing book was on his desk with like a whole bunch of flags in it, and I was a huge reader too, and I started reading Kerouac and Ken Kesey and like a lot of psychedelic research and books, and got very interested in altered states of consciousness and different things. And a lot of my creative writing had references and things to substance that you cannot talk about or write about in school, and he was very right, but that's what came out of me. I can't control what comes when it comes. So a friend of mine and I put together on our own this whole night of music and poetry in our auditorium, and the place was packed. It was just a beautiful evening. We got a lot of people involved, a lot of musicians. And it felt really good to be in production and to be in charge of something and to be the leader of a team. And at that time I didn't think twice about it, and it helped in the future remember that feeling when I got put in front of a team or had responsibilities that felt like too much. Like I just I've done hard things before.
Yes.
So that was a lot of fun.
That tips in a little bit to something we'll talk about more later that you and I have talked a lot about, and that's post-traumatic growth.
Yeah.
You know, you have that memory of being successful, of being in charge, of being of service to so many other people.
Yeah.
So you can go back to that and hold on to that when you move into future experiences that are a little bit scary, a little bit overwhelming.
When I left Oregon, that's where I was before I came here, it was a lot like leaving Chicago. I was on a very, very downward spiral. And I knew that if I stayed, it was not going to be good. And I packed up and I left. I called a friend who was down here, and I just needed somewhere to go. At parties, you know, people pull me aside and like, hey, I've been to the last 3 parties with you, and you're obliterated. Like, you have a problem with alcohol, man. Like, you need help.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't believe that I did. I thought I had it in control. You know, I'm a Sagittarius. Controlled chaos is in my DNA, you know, because I had evidence of it, you know.
Yeah.
I lived my life to that point where without a DUI, without hurting myself, hurting anyone else.
We can always find evidence, can't we, for staying where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And after getting sober, you know, I look back and I'm like, gosh, that's the evidence I was trying to focus on. Yeah. You know, I was unable to see it. I was unable to look around because I thought that I was infallible, superhuman.
Yeah. Yeah. And you were what, 36 at that point, maybe?
No, I'm 37 now, so I was like right around 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
And after a series of relationships, that said the same thing. You know, I admitted defeat. I hadn't hit bottom, but I knew that I wanted connection and I wanted relationship, and I knew that I was going to have to address my addiction, my alcoholism at that point. You know, I don't necessarily call it alcoholism anymore. You know, I just don't drink.
Well, what did you do? What helped?
I went to therapy.
Okay.
Yep. I looked up therapists in the area, and I found a center and called and had a little interview with this guy. Told him what was going on, and he said he could help me, that he wanted to help me. And we talked. We had one session, you know, about my addiction, about alcohol. How can he help me? And you know, very quickly into our time together, you know, it was. I was ready to tell the truth, and you know, we talked about other substance use, about my lying, about hiding, about shame, and all of these things. And he was is a somatic based therapist, and I had never paid attention to my body. Because looking back, my body was always in dysregulation because my environment was unsafe. You know, and I didn't want to know what was going on, no matter what.
Yeah.
And I would do anything to not feel that. And I was very, very distracted. And you know, we addressed times in my life where feelings come up. You know, he was like, think about alcohol. Where do you feel that in your body? And then we went into like, where was the first time you can remember feeling that? And you go back and you talk to the situation. And, you know, a lot of times I would just pick that little version of me up and talk to him and just say, hey, like, you're about to go through a really, really difficult period, and it is gonna suck. But I want you to know that what you do gets you to me. And we are okay now. Like, we don't have to behave in this way anymore. You know, the situations that we're in up here are not that situation, and we can choose differently.
Wow, that's just, you just summed up the whole growing up process right there.
Yeah, I was seeing him for a while, and my alcohol use was not getting any better, and COVID happened, and that was ugly. And I got concerned, and my partner at the time was extremely concerned, so I threw in the towel, and I admitted defeat, and I went to rehab. Yeah, it helped a lot. I was clean and sober for some months, and it was easy. You know, I started going to AA found a sponsor, was really excited about that. Kind of tapered off of going to AA. Kind of started tapering off of my meditation practice. Wasn't going to the gym as much, and there was those were signs right there.
Yeah.
You're not connecting yourself to what is best for you.
Losing your true north.
Yeah, I was down in Sacramento last May, and decided that I thought it was a good idea to have a cocktail at dinner because I thought I could. And I did. And I made it a couple of weeks, and then I was having a glass of wine, and then I was having a drink at a wedding that I was working, and then I was drinking on my way to work again. And it happened fast.
Yeah.
So I went into full-blown relapse last summer, and my partner left me, in a clean way, and laid it out. This is what I saw. This is how many chances. This is what you agreed on. This is how I feel. You are a dangerous person right now without addressing this stuff. I don't feel safe, and that hurt. Really, really bad. To hear that I am making someone feel so unsafe that they have to leave.
And she was probably meaning not unsafe to her alone, but unsafe to yourself.
All of it. Yeah. And after a pretty serious and terrible incident in Nevada in August, I ended up in a mental health facility for a week, not knowing why I was there in the beginning because I was still sobering up, and in any place like that, I'm always engaged in the group activities. I was going to AA, I was going to all the different groups, and I realized how much my input helped people, and I started thinking about it, and I was getting curious about, wow, like if I can't handle this on my own sober, like why don't I just get a job in a place like this? So I have to see it every day. And I thought that was a good idea, and it was.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I was so mad at myself and so full of shame. And
I just want to stop a minute.
Yeah.
I want to point this out to our viewers, and you might want to help me with this. When we're on this growth path, which we're all on, there's so much up and down in it. One step forward, two step backwards, this kind of, it's never just like a zoom. We might have a zoom moment, but most of it's kind of like this, And you're just, what Noah's saying right now is so poignant and so clear about this process that we go through. And hopefully each time we do that, we get a little further down the road. We get a little more honest, a little more humble, a little more compassionate. But, I mean, as we all go through this back and forth thing,
Can I jump in?
Yeah, please.
As we go through the back and forth thing, it's also like our memories. We distort our memories and we remember things in different ways. And when the ups and downs of recovery, of therapy, of growth, of working on ourselves, of inner work, when we are continuously focused on what is going well, how much growth I have, wow, these are such good things. We also have to open our aperture, and you said it perfectly, get more honest and see the whole picture, because for me, I was so focused on all the good things that were happening. I was, not therapizing my friends, but offering tools and getting wonderful feedback. And I was like, I am kicking butt in therapy. I'm learning so much, but all the while, like somatically deep inside of me, I always knew that the hardest thing was lurking and hiding, and I didn't want to address it. So I just focused on the good stuff.
Yeah. So where are we going from here? You've got some school coming up.
Yeah, I do. Well, I actually, too, I would like to talk about what's happened in the past 48 hours.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so 48 hours ago, I, after 9 months of waiting, got my prosthetic eyes in. And yeah, these eyes are not real.
And you've had them for, what, a week now?
2 days.
Oh, 2 days.
Yeah. And, everyone I FaceTimed and talked to was crying and just so happy for me, But for me, I don't really know any different.
Yeah.
I can't really feel them, it's a little irritating. But I went to my softball game and I got to get out of the car and engage with people who didn't know, and just feeling them, the joy of them getting to look me in the eyes again.
Yeah.
Really made me start to think about what I was missing inside of me that felt so far away, something I never thought that I would feel again, that connection that I was always looking for. And, I realized how important it is for me to be able to engage with someone and have them see the expressions on my face. Like, am I excited? Am I upset? Am I deranged? Am I sad? Like, all of these things. And I feel complete again. Like, I can show up in the world authentically and with my full self. Like, I will be understood and seen. And it's been marvelous. Yeah. The ease of this now. Everything that's coming next seems like a breeze. Like now.
So I didn't realize, I would have no way of knowing, but I didn't realize what a huge difference the prosthetic eyes would make.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
No, I had no idea.
Yeah. Huh.
But I can tell you, I feel so much more like me now.
And so what else has happened in the last 48 hours?
I got an email from the blind school out in Colorado, and I got accepted, and I have a start date. And
Oh, good.
yeah, things have just been jamming.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything to do or anyone to hang out with yesterday, and my friend randomly called me and asked if I wanted to go over to another friend's house that runs a camp at Burning Man, and they were packing the last of their things, and I got there, and my friend that runs the camp handed me 2 free Burning Man tickets and sent me on my way. And we had been in conversation all summer about it.
$3,000 worth of tickets,
Yeah.
I'd say.
And the last time I went to Burning Man was 2011.
Yeah.
I've never really felt called to go. And I had planned to go with them for the full week, and it was just too much going to blind school, whatever. Yeah. My friend I was talking to yesterday was like, I want to go for 24 hours. And I was like, how about we go for 48? Yeah. So we've agreed to go to 48 hours of Burning Man. And I'm excited to do it.
And what better people to go with? These are the Zendo people.
Yeah.
So say a little bit about Zendo.
Yeah, okay,
Probably don't know.
Zendo is an organization that focuses on harm reduction and mental health care at large-scale music festivals where, you don't know what's going to happen. A lot of psychedelics, you don't know. And when people are in crisis, they need a safe space to go. Mm-hmm. And they have trained counselors to, welcome people and make them feel comfortable, allow their process, and have tools and techniques to care for those who need it.
And they've gone to Burning Man for years, haven't they?
Many, many years. Yeah. The unique thing about that situation that happened yesterday is that Chelsea and my good friend Allie and my friend Kelsey, who have all been so integral in my recovery since I've been home, they happened to be the only other car within sight distance of the accident. And they showed up and jumped out of the car and immediately just went into work mode. This is a crisis. We know how to do this. We know how to care for people. We need to get a hold of law enforcement. It was magic to hear those girls go into action. Yeah. And when I got home, they brought me in to their fold. They started inviting me over. They went out of their way to come and get me, to take me to the gym, take me to events, really made me feel like cared for, they really want to be there for me and to be a part of their community. And the fact that we're all going to be out there together is
Well,
really,
you just,
really
You
special.
just said the magic word, community.
Yeah.
We all need that to recover and to stay recovered.
Yeah.
Without that, we get lost so easily.
Yeah. And my biggest learning lessons through my recovery process, which has been so many folds, is that, the truth will set you free. There is a root cause of addictive tendencies, and it's important to have forgiveness when we are weak. And it is not an easy road,
No.
and I feel like a lot of people who fall into addictive tendencies and have that, usually are full of trauma and usually don't have the tools to notice what's actually happening and what's driving it and all of those things. And I guess my message would be, like, if you're finding something that is working or making you aware of a pattern that you don't like, stick with that and dive a little bit deeper at the point where it becomes uncomfortable before it goes into overwhelm.
And I think there's overwhelm and there's boredom. I've just been sketching a tiny little article on boredom. And I think when we get bored, if we go, oh, that's my cue, I need to go deeper. Because when we're bored, it's like we're pacing back and forth in front of the door that holds our next space. But as long as we're pacing there, we're bored. It's bored to pace back and forth in front of a closed door.
Yeah.
And that's when we're vulnerable to addiction.
Yeah.
Boredom, I think, is as much a trigger as overwhelm.
Yeah. I mean, there's a pretty strong saying in, recovery circles that, like, just do the next thing.
Right.
Idle time
Yeah.
builds a busy mind
Yeah.
that can convince you of anything. So,
Right.
Even if it's mowing the lawn or walking your dog or anything, just do the next thing.
Okay.
All
So,
right.
blind school.
Yeah.
How long is that going to be?
6 to 9 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a space.
Yeah. I was considering going to one in Berkeley that was 3 months, but that one felt more like a boot camp. And I'm 37. I'm excited. I'm motivated. I am ready to move on to the next stage of my life.
Well, I think you're so smart to choose that, even though it's a much bigger commitment. Because, like you've been saying, for you to grow, you need to feel loved. That's true of almost everybody. We can't grow if we don't feel loved. Jean and I used to run crisis clinics around the country. And one of the most effective things that actually Jean learned to do with people he hired who had a history of mental illness is they would go to the squad car bringing this person in. And the person, obviously, if you're in a squad car, you have to be in handcuffs. So feeling vulnerable, feeling a lot of shame, feeling a lot of anger, and someone like you walks up to the window and says, we're glad you're here and you're going to be safe here. Those two things, if people could just get those two things wherever they go, it'd be so much better.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're going to a safe place that's loving and considerate and can recognize you as an advanced being. You don't need a boot camp. You don't need to just learn the steps. You need your heart to be put into it and hold it.
Yep.
So 6 to 9 months, and there you learn how to be independent without your sight,
Yep.
and probably a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah. All kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then after that, your plan would be,
I
Some
am coming
ideas?
back here,
yeah,
and I will probably start prerequisite college courses at Sierra.
yeah,
I've considered moving to Portland. I've considered moving to the Bay. Considered moving to Denver. But what's carried me since my accident, and even before my accident, when I was in a very, very dark place, is community, is my friends, is the people that I have poured so much into over the years that couldn't find a moment to give back to me because I gave all the time. You know?
Well, you weren't someone that acted like you needed anything.
Yeah.
So it's hard to give to you
Yeah.
in that space.
And now where I am, I don't have a choice but to receive. And I feel so loved and so supported and so cared for genuinely. And that has helped so much, you know, coupled with my brother being here for the first 6 months, being patient, taking me, teaching me, offering me
he was
advice
amazing.
and guidance. And,
Yeah.
you know,
And he's your little brother.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was not very good to him most of our lives. And he just came and showed me what love looks like.
Yeah.
And it was so selfless. And
Yeah.
seeing that in him just was so inspiring, and it was beautiful. And so, yeah, I'm going to come back here, take some prereqs, and then decide on a school for psychotherapy. And I really want to be a therapist.
I think that you would be wonderful at that.
Yeah.
You would just be wonderful.
What that looks like, I don't know yet. But I know that I want to help people. I know that I have a story to share, and that, you know, if I can battle a ton of trauma and unruly youth and multiple addictions and self-abuse and get to a place where I am able to look inside and see the bigger picture and work with those things and forgive myself and be a person in a safe space to be able to help other people through what they're going through.
Yeah.
It feels so good.
Well, it's a three-way win. Again, Gina and I've had a lot of experience with this because for about 20, well, it's continuing today, so I could say for 24 years, we took people right off the Social Security rolls who were on disability for a mental illness, trained them to do peer work, and hired them. And once they went to work, it changed the way they saw their whole past. It's like now they knew why they had that past, because that past informed them how to help other people. So no longer was it just a random bunch of illogical mistakes or unfortunate circumstances. It was a series of events that taught them how to serve other people. And when they served other people, they got better. And the people they served got better. And the organization they worked for got better. It was just, it continues to this day, an amazing process. Just an amazing process.
Yeah.
And that's what you're up for.
Yeah.
You're going to turn all that into a gift.
Yeah. And I want to honor that, and it's so inspiring, and you guys' story and the life you've built for yourself, and you know, you're 82.
No, I'm only 80.
80, you're 80.
Come on
and
now.
you're still so active and working and traveling and giving presentations, and you know, I feel like when you find your life's work, it's
not work.
nothing gets in the way of
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So it's amazing, and you're such an amazing person and deeply connected with spirit, and yeah, you're so vulnerable, and I just love spending time with you, and I'm so glad you had me on.
Me too, you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it, my friends. Noah's amazing story from his heart, from his soul, sharing with you in the hopes that you will hear something that will give you strength and hope, that will give you courage to harness those traumatic experiences, whether they're little or big, harness them in a way that pulls you forward into your next growth step. So thanks for joining us. As always, I just love it when you show up. And here's something I wanted to tell you. I should have said this later. What was that? Many of these podcasts are now qualified for continuing education. My plan is to get all of them qualified for continuing education, but it's a big task to go through the paperwork. I think at this point we may have 4 that are CEU approved, but pretty soon they all will be. So you can watch a podcast and and get continuing ed credit for it. Isn't that cool? Help you with your license and your certificates and so on. Okay, well, that's just a little frosting on the cake. Okay, bye for now. Love you very much and see you next time.